So the most recent episode of The Bad Batch introduced us to a Rancor named Muchi. The Batch saves her from some Zygerians and then hand her over to none other than Bib Fortuna. The implication here being that Muchi is the Rancor we see in Return of the Jedi. But the Aftermath books established that Rancor was named Pateesa. So, is that the same Rancor? Is this another retcon from the series like what happened to Kanan in Order 66 on Collar? And does this even matter? If I had to guess, which I do, I think Muchi is meant to be the same Rancor. I think that was probably the creator's intent, that we got to see where the Rancor came from, but more importantly that it played into the themes of the Bad Batch. They're adapting to survive, they're now working as mercenaries, and their very first job wound up being for Jabba the Hutt. It wasn't anything bad. In fact, I'd argue that it was more good than bad. They saved some slaves. Great. They also got a pet for a galactic criminal. Okay, I mean, not necessarily good, but not bad either. And when it comes down to it, that's all that I think is important about Muchi when it comes to the series. We can say for sure that the Bad Batch helped get a Rancor for Jabba the Hutt. Whether it's the Rancor from Return of the Jedi doesn't matter in the slightest. It doesn't change anything about the Batch's experience. It doesn't change anything about Luke's experience over 20 years later. So this debate ultimately isn't that important. And like so many discrepancies, only a handful of Star Wars fans will even notice. Most people watching the Bad Batch will see it and go, "Oh, it's the Rancor," and that's perfectly fine. But come on, we're all huge nerds here. Of course I'm curious about this. I'm generally willing to let go of most canon contradictions when they pop up, depending on what they are, but my completionist canon junkie brain does want it all to try to fit. So, is it possible for Muchi and Pateesa to be one and the same? I do think so. First, let me say that the story that first named Pateesa was Aftermath Life Debt. In that book, Malakili thinks back on training multiple Rancors and says that Pateesa was his last. So it's very possible that Muchi was just one of many Rancors kept in Jabba's palace. But again, I'm gonna assume that the creator's intent in this episode was to give us an origin story for Pateesa, so why the different name? Well, first of all, Pateesa means friend in Huttese, and Malakili is the only person we've ever seen call the Rancor by that name. Maybe it was just a nickname he used personally. Or maybe Jabba changed the name from Muchi to Pateesa. Don't most people do that when they get new pets? Our dog Hilo's name was Timmy when we first got him. Our last dog's name was George before we named him Biggs. That's the least dog-like name I've ever heard, by the way. So maybe Jabba got Muchi and was like, "What kind of a name is that for a Rancor?" and then changed it to something in Huttese. I will point out that it does look like Muchi knew Bib Fortuna at the end of the episode, but I could write that off as her being a gift to Jabba. The Rancor was a birthday gift from Bib back in Legends, after all. So I think a name change in this instance is perfectly understandable, but there's one more thing I need to address. A reference book from 2015, Absolutely Everything You Need to Know, states that the Rancor in Return of the Jedi is male, and Muchi is definitely female. I will always take story material over reference material when it comes to stuff like this. Reference material is meant to fill in the gaps in the absence of any story. It gets overwritten all the time. So the name is really the only thing I felt like I needed to make fit, and again, I think it can. But as a reminder, none of this matters. Muchi and Pateesa can be the same Rancor. They can be different Rancors. Heck, Muchi could be Pateesa's mother for all we know. It literally doesn't change anything about the Bad Batch or Return of the Jedi. This is just an exercise in the kind of weird, dumb canon questions nerds like me love to dive into. So what do you think? Are they the same Rancor or are they different? Let me know your headcanon in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for all our Star Wars coverage, follow us on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.